The views expressed are not necessarily those of AVM Software, Paltalk.com, its employees, or management. News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. And also on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you are encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. And thanks to our friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we are syndicated into an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. Boaz Frankel, who can't get his music to play, the opening music for the show, is sitting across the board from me here at the CRN Digital Talk Radio studios. Technical difficulties. It's not CRN's fault, it's our fault. Boaz, these are great studios. We ought to be doing the show from here more often. Except I'm not hearing you, so great. Boaz, just, be like a kid.
What do you mean you don't hear me? Of course you hear me.
There you go. These are great studios here at CRN Digital Talk Radio. Why didn't you invite me here previously?
You know how difficult I find it to sit right opposite you and work with you? When you were 3,500 miles away, I could mess up and at least, you wouldn't know about it. But I'm sitting right here now and you're scrutinizing me.
Do you feel nervous, Boaz?
Not at all.
Yeah. I'm sure you don't. Boaz, what do you think about this trip by Barack Obama to the Middle East? He went to Afghanistan. He went to Iraq. Today he lands in Israel. He was positioned, especially by the Republicans, as a guy who really doesn't know very much about foreign policy. Now suddenly he is an expert.
Well, actually, Gary, what he's trying to do is that this is, once again, gearing up for the presidential elections. He is trying to show the world that that despite his young age, that he can go out, he can talk to world leaders, and he wants to show that he has the skills to do it.
So, because I'm looping back around through you, I think.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the question is, were they wrong when they said that he didn't know anything about foreign policy? Or are they wrong now when it appears that he does? I mean, he went into Iraq and got Prime Minister Al-Maliki to basically endorse his plan for the withdrawal of the U.S. troops. So already Al-Maliki is almost endorsing him as the candidate for president of the United States. He comes across as somebody who knows how to deal with world leaders.
Well, I don't think it's entirely unfair to say, or rather fair to say, that he has no skills at all to talk to world leaders or to shape foreign policies. I mean, he has some experience, but I mean, everything is relative. You look at Barack Obama as opposed to the previous leaders of the White House that have done the very same job, going at, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Madeleine Albright, you remember her? From the Clinton administration. He sent her to the Middle East. Some would have said that it was a mistake to send a woman to the Middle East to negotiate with the elements there. But she did a pretty good job because she had experience, prior experience. So I would say that Barack doesn't have as much experience as Albright had, but I would say that it's fair to say that he's probably not the best person to be negotiating for us in the Middle East right now.
Well, Lord Merciful Vu writes in text in our virtual auditorium, you don't need prior experience to do a good job. For example, John F. Kennedy, they said the same about him, that he knew very little about foreign policy. He was a young U.S. senator, had no experience, very little experience. He was elected president. Then comes the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he stood up to the Russians in a forthright manner. He rose to the occasion.
Well, John F. Kennedy rose to the occasion of the Cuban Missile Crisis because he had what it takes to rise to the occasion and stand up for the United States of America. You don't have leaders like that anymore, Gary. I mean, how can you compare John F. Kennedy of that era of the 60s to the leaders that we have today. Leaders of today are by far afraid to take and make the hard decisions. And you know what, Gary? When they do, they get criticized for it.
So in the case of John McCain, the guy who was positioned up until now as the one who understands foreign policy, is suddenly behind the eight ball a little bit. He's released a new campaign ad that they slapped together pretty quickly, which attacks the news media, which, by the way, he has enjoyed a pretty good honeymoon himself with the news media because he treats the reporters on the bus pretty well. And so they treat him fairly well. But he's attacking the news media as being too friendly to Barack Obama, giving Obama much more sway when it comes to foreign policy now than he actually deserves. And now I'm hearing that McCain might, while Obama is out of the country, announce his vice presidential running mate this week to try to take some of the spotlight back from Obama. Clearly, McCain is struggling right now because I've actually heard some analysts suggest that Obama is getting greater attention during this trip than they anticipate that he will during the Democratic National Convention.
Well, now we're getting down to the semantics of the differences between how the media looks at Obama as opposed to McCain. You know what I think, Gary? I think that McCain can afford to be a lot more of a loose cannon when it comes to shooting his mouth off in front of the media, more so than Obama. Why? Because he has a history. And the media more or less knows what